Hello, winners. Welcome to Two for the Win podcast with your hosts, Nick and Wil. We share 3 episodes weekly. Monday Mindset, which talks about leadership and mindset. Wanderlust Wednesday, where we discuss travel and travel agency aspects. And Fanatic Friday, where we talk about sports and the latest events going on with that, as well as some hot takes. So really excited to be with you here today. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and share the Two for the Win podcast so that you can be aware of when our latest episodes drop. And Nick, I believe we have a announcement to make as far as sponsorship that you'd like to share.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm very excited to share that Nick Monard and Associates with Dream Vacations is sponsoring this episode today. So very excited to have actually like a company sponsoring our episode as well. As we go, we will of course enlarge that to other potential sponsors. But for now, we're gonna use Dream Vacations to do so. So please continue to listen to us, and you will see what else we have in store for you.
Fantastic. No, that's excellent. And today is Mindset Monday. Happy Monday, Nick.
Happy Monday.
So in our first episode on our first Monday Mindset episode, we talked about the launch of your book. And, mindset is my degree, and that's off to a fantastic start. Great to see. And all that came from that. And then the second episode, we touched on a number of different things with mindset, some being resilience and others. And I thought today might be good for us to chat a little bit more about leadership this time, since we're both leaders in the organizations we're with. We're leaders in other aspects of our lives, so to speak, and have had, I don't know about you, but for me, I think I've spent more time in leadership position than in a non-leadership position as I think about my career and endeavors since I've become an adult. So we have a lot to say and some opinions on this where many people may agree and some people may not, and that's what makes this fun. But I thought today, one of the topics that I know you and I have discussed quite often is the difference between leadership and managers, or leadership and those who are good motivators or speakers. Sometimes it can be both, right? You can have people who are good leaders and managers, and people who are good leaders who are also very effective motivators and speakers. But sometimes there are nuanced differences. So what are your thoughts about chatting about that today?
Oh, no, absolutely. That's something that's very dear to me, because usually when you go into different organization, or even if you work on your own businesses and you start having like people working with you, when you have someone having one person reporting to them in any capacity, they like to call themselves a leader. And that's something that I want to talk about and specify what I believe leadership is should be, and then more stories to come. But yes, I'm excited about this topic.
Great. Why don't we start off by defining leadership? So you can have honors first if you'd like. Like when you hear the term leadership, how would you define it for our listeners?
Again, same thing that I always say. Everything I know, it's based on what I've learned from mentors, from leaders, and others. And I try to take something from everyone to define myself in different category. When it comes to leaders, I do believe that you can call yourself a leader where you are able to create other leader. I believe that's the definition of leadership. If you can, of course, inspire people, be authentic, be able to show first, and then people inspired by what you do to do the same thing, so all those things are right. But unless you can create other leader, I don't believe that someone can call themselves a leader themselves, because it's a process. We have to go by stages. So this is for me the first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about leadership. But you will, I know you've been extremely successful since you start your career at a very young age out of Las Vegas. So yeah, tell us what you believe. What is the first thing come to mind when you think about leadership?
Yeah, I liked what you said about cultivating other leaders. I think that's critically important. To me, that's a little more on the coaching and development side. I think for me, when I think of leadership, the first thing that comes to my mind is, are you somebody who can intrinsically inspire people to do things that they may not otherwise do left to their own devices. So there's, extrinsic motivation, which are rewards, incentives. Think about carrot and stick. And in fact, Daniel Pink wrote a great book on this called Drive that I highly recommend. He's got a TED Talk. If there's readers out there, people want to listen to the audiobook, you can get the gist of what Dan Pink talks about in a 15-minute TED Talk on motivation. But I think the ability to inspire someone from within intrinsically, focused on their nobler motives, focused on the things that are important to them to not only exceed well for themselves, but be part of something conceptually that's bigger than themselves and inspired to do great work. And so for me, it's more about, can you create that intrinsic inspiration? Because many people are self-motivated. They will produce at a certain level, so to speak, regardless of any external factors. But can you help them take it up a gear? Take it to the next level. Or, in the last episode, we talked about the two miners trying to dig towards the diamond mine, and they're both around the same place, but one turned around, went back where the other one was going forward. Can you help that person, maybe reconsider turning back and just keep going at it so that they can hit their own personal diamond mine? So for me, that's what I think about when I think about effective leadership.
And that's beautiful because, like you said, there is more than one way. If you ask 5 different leaders, they will have some similarities, but it's going to be a lot of different, way to explain about leadership. So what you said is totally right as well. Of course, I think coaching is the key for everything. And I love the fact that you mentioned about the little push. That's what I call the little push. I always believe that the people that are actually doing the work, they are 99% responsible of their success or failures. And you as a leader will have the little 1% push that will put them over the edge to actually achieve what they thought first impossible. And that's also something that I believe in leadership, is like you push the person to achieve something they thought first impossible. So how to do that is the question. And that's where I think we can talk about the difference between being a manager and being a leader. But I want to give it to you first about maybe an example you have from your past experiences about a time where you were working with someone that was maybe doing good job as a manager, but not as much as a leader.
Yeah, I have a few. The one that comes to mind is when I was in Las Vegas. I was in the financial services vertical, and I at one point actually owned my own brokerage in there, and I was affiliated with a company who was also doing financial investments and insurance. I was focused more on mortgages at that time, mortgage lending. But I had the gentleman who I went into a partnership with was probably the most compelling motivational speaker, greatest motivator. And in terms of management, like making sure people knew their role, administering the various things that we had to do in order to build our businesses and our affiliation, was extremely strong. But the sad thing is he was not a leader. He lacked, and his biggest failing, in my opinion, was he lacked integrity. And in fact, he ended up a number of years later, we had severed ties and went different directions, and he had a number of felony indictments for a real estate investment scam in Latin America, where he was having people buy into it, and they never built it and stuff. So it's just horrendous. But and it floored me, because when he would hear this person speak, it make me want to run through a wall. Like, he could get me to do things that otherwise people wouldn't be able to do. So it's kind of that intrinsic motivation I was talking about earlier. But where his failing is that outside of those words that could create action, that could paint a picture of a vision and get me committed toward moving toward it, there was that lack of substance, of authenticity, of empathy, of integrity. And so for me, it was the main thing that led me to go in a different direction, which obviously I'm glad I did, because had I stayed affiliated with him, I might have gotten collateral damage from some of the things that he was doing. So for me, that one sticks in my mind because I'd never met someone before or since actually that was as compelling of a speaker. I mean, he would speak in front of crowds of 20,000 people. We were affiliated with some companies that we filled a stadium in Mandalay Bay, and I mean, just would get the crowd rousing, almost foaming at the mouth in motivation. But I would not classify him as a leader, even though he held a very prestigious leadership position in the companies we were affiliated with.
Interesting. Well, I had something very similar to share, so I will not share it because it's pretty much the same kind of story. But yeah, again, there's a difference between words and action. I much rather have someone who is a man of a few words. I think it's an expression here in US, compared to someone who has a lot to say, but the action are lacking. And so back in the days when I was living in Belgium, I was leading a big organization called Hamburg Mannheimer, which is, of course, Hamburg. It's in Germany, and that's in life insurance. And I had an organization around 3,000 people with around 22 leaders reporting to me at that time. And same thing, like the situation came in like where we were in a meeting, in the leadership meeting, you can hear always the same 2 3 people, so very loud people, like always have something to say about each question you ask. And those people, every time that you ask a question, you know that those are the first who are going to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And they are the first to advertise everywhere, I'm leading, I'm a leader, and those are the one that I felt were the least leaders, because they were dictate everything. They were telling versus asking, So they were always the one pointing fingers and make sure that the reward came to them. I believe if you are a leader, you want to elevate people around you instead of trying to elevate yourself. And I think that's a big difference. And we can hear that in different organizations I was with before, where when you are in a meeting with other leader, they talk about what they did. I helped doing this, and I did these initiatives, and it's always about themselves. While when I hear with people that I would respect a lot more or look up to, they always tell, okay, this person in one of my team decide to do this, and it was successful, so we replicate it. This person actually create this new initiative that is extremely positive. That's what I call a leader. That's someone who will not try to get qualification from their senior leader, but they will actually do what they can to elevate everybody around them. And if you understand that, the more people you elevate around you, you will automatically be elevate yourself. That's just the way it works. So I would encourage people who are listening or maybe are taking some notes about, okay, I want to become one day a leader. First of all, take a mentor, listen to people who have been through before you, and don't try to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has been invented already. You can improve it as well while you get there. When you get to a position when you feel like people are following you, people are actually growing around you, then tweak it to make it even better, like I mentioned during the last episodes already. But listen, ask question, be curious. By doing all those things, you will automatically improve yourself to become a better version of the leader you inspire to be. So that would be my answer, my long-winded answer of your question.
No, it's good. And you touched on a couple of elements that I think are really important and like to dive a little deeper in. And the first one was tied to your definition of leadership, and you mentioned it again in your recent response. And that is, are you helping people grow and develop, basically? And when I would get asked, sometimes people would put time on my calendar and ask me about my thoughts on leadership, and they would say, so what's like one of your primary measures of success as a leader? And my first response nearly always is how many people got promoted in my organization that I led in the last year. Because to your point, and this ties into something else you mentioned, if you take care of people, and Richard Branson, I think, has a phenomenal quote on this. For those of you who don't know, Richard Branson is the founder of Virgin, known for music and as well as cruises. And Richard Branson's quote is, I don't worry about taking care of my clients. I make my people my number one priority. I take care of my people and they will take care of my clients. And I'm paraphrasing, it's not the exact quote, but I really believe in that philosophy. Like, I have fiduciary duty for the organization I'm with to make sure we're delivering on the business outcomes. That's a given. But if you take care of the people, if you're people centric, people first, and you create that intrinsic inspiration, you coach and develop them, they're growing professionally and developing various soft skills as well along that, invariably that aligns to the business and it'll improve the business. And for them on that path of growth, more often than not, that'll earn them promotions, merit increases, maybe pursue other opportunities within the organization. And maybe it's not within the business unit I'm affiliated with, but it's not about that. It's about them growing and cultivating the talent that comes into our organization and fine tuning it. And so when you touched on that, it immediately made me think about, for me, my primary measure of success as a leader is, are people growing and developing and advancing in their career, whatever path that may be for them.
Love it. I mean, I think that we are very similar on when we talk about leadership. So that I'm not surprised there, but it's also what I always refer to. I look at how many people have been promoted and how many people have been developed to the next level, and then that will show you usually who are actually doing a great job promoting their people, elevating the people, and not elevating themselves. So I totally agree. And when you said about Bronson, it's that quote is huge. I love it. He had another quote that actually inspired me, and I remember when I was 24 years old before starting my career with Hamburg Mannheimer, because I was offered that position and I had no idea about insurance. I had no idea about, developing teams at the time and things like that. And I always remember that I was on LinkedIn at the time. It was the beginning of LinkedIn. And someone posted a picture of Richard Branson with that quote. If someone offers you a job that you have no idea how to succeed on, just take the job, accept the offer, and learn afterwards. And I remember I was in a position when I got that offer, and that's a law of attraction. I believe that you see what you need to see at that moment. And then I saw that quote from Richard Branson, and then it makes me say, you know what, let's do it. And that was the best decision, because I learned majority of things I know today from leadership came from that company that I was affiliate with for 8 years and growing a large organization. So I love that example, and I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah. And it's funny, when you were mentioning that, immediately I thought of something that I share with people generally in their annual reviews, or sometimes just, friends who are asking for, different resources as advice, was a letter number 13 by Seneca. So Seneca was a ancient Greek Stoic, one of the founders of Stoicism. And the letter number 13 is called On Groundless Fears. And I first stumbled across this through Tim Ferriss' podcast. So Tim Ferriss is a well-known author of the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and he does a lot of really fascinating interviews, and would love to have him on the show at some point. That would be amazing. But he was getting really big into Stoicism and was sharing this letter on groundless fears and how he reads it several times a year. And I actually put a quarterly reminder to reread the letter. But basically, it talks about, a lot of times we project fears that are non-existent. We think of what could go wrong, or the mistakes that could be made, or bad things that could happen, or judgments we may receive. And if you just set aside those things And to your point, like the Richard Branson quote, just take action. More often than not, you realize those fears never manifest. They never came up. And it was something that was just in our heads. And had we just took action, took those first fear-filled steps and moved forward, we'd find more often than not, things would progress well. Those fears would never manifest. And so we could have missed an opportunity or missed growing because we just were projecting negative things and they never came to pass if we would just take the action.
100%. And it's the case for more than leadership. In life in general, in personal relationships, friendship, and everything like that, we always think about what could go wrong. Oh my God, my spouse is going to do that or something like that. And actually, it's not the case, but you put the poison in your mind, and it's usually what will dictate your actions, which will deteriorate the relationship. So it's the same in everything. And that's something I want to bring up. Leadership, what you learn in leadership, if you apply that in your personal and day-to-day life, it's only going to be positive because those steps are life. It's more than leadership. It's just life. It's a lifestyle. So if you apply those things, it's going to also help mostly than not in your personal life, I believe. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And to kind of circle back to where we started with the difference between leadership and managers, I think a lot of the management activities tend to be maybe more tactical in nature, to some degree administrative. There's things that have to get done in the business. It's not just all about intrinsic inspiration and, growth and accountability and things like that. But when you think about the term manager or management, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I already mentioned the fact that, people tend to believe they are because they have a person reporting to them, and they are usually telling a lot, like I said. So in a company setting or even a business, when you have different, like a book of how to do things, like in companies, for example, a manager tend to read that and make sure to check the box on each and every steps by bypassing the human aspect of it, by bypassing maybe just take a step back again, look at the situation and act upon what's happening in front of you instead of looking at the book and said, okay, first step is that, second step I did, and I go to the third step. And then they go to their leader and said, hey, I did every single thing on this paper. It should work. If it doesn't work, well, it's not me. So they usually lack also accountability, in my opinion, because they believe that they do everything by the book, so the results should come, which we all know it's not the case. It may happen sometimes, but it's not the case if you listen to the human aspect of the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, a lot of times I've seen people who employ management, if you will, more than leadership, like when they're trying to drive their organization or the business they work for forward in the KPIs. They focus just on the numbers. And I think like anything in life, it's important to know where you stand, right? It's like a scorecard in sports. You have to have KPIs to know how are things moving forward, where are the areas of opportunity. But, I have a book on the shelf behind me, The Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I think that is where it becomes kind of pivotal shift from managing the business and trying to improve the business outcomes towards leading the business and trying to improve business outcomes, because it's not just about the KPIs. It's about the nobler motive behind the KPIs, like what they represent, So whether it's client satisfaction, growth, the organizational impact of those sort of things, whether you own a small organization or you're part of a larger organization, it's articulating the why behind these things. Why are we going after it? Why are these things important? What does that mean, both from the client, the organization, as well as the individual's perspective? And so I think for me, I start to notice a clear divide between managers and leaders on how they try to progress the organization they're with or the business that they own.
Absolutely. No, we totally agree with it. And you mentioned Sinek now. So we have Ferris, Sinek, and Bronson. That's three on a top list of people that we wanna have one day on the show. So
Yeah.
so yes, I think that it's great nuggets today. I'm very pleased that we talked about all of that. I hope that the listener will also take some notes and maybe some action based on this. And if you do, or if you don't, please share with us and tell us a little bit what you think and what we would like to hear from us about leadership mindset or anything around those topics. I would love to listen and to adapt as we go as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And so I think we're at a point now we can share with our winners, the audience, that make sure to tune in next week for the Monday Mindset, where we're going to have a special guest, and really excited to have that person chat, and for our winners, our listeners, to hear from them and their perspective on mindset and leadership.
I'm really excited for the next guest. We'll keep it surprise until next week, but you need to tune in. It's going to be extremely positive and extremely useful.
Yeah, totally agree. So make sure, again, winners, listeners, that you subscribe, follow, and share Two for the Win podcast with Nick and Wil. We have, as I mentioned at the beginning, Monday Mindset, which was today, Wanderlust Wednesday, which is coming up in 2 days. So looking forward to talking about travel and travel agency, and then Fanatic Friday. So thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure to join next week where we have our special guest interview. And until then, have a wonderful day and be well, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, winner. Bye-bye.
Bye.